Hello and welcome to Huddersfield Town Extra Time in association with Sports Broker. You join me from a freezing cold Bloomfield Road, but it makes it much easier having just seen Town win 3-0 against Blackpool. I'm thrilled to be joined by Dave Hartrick of the Examiner and Opta and Iain Dunn, ex-Town player. How are you two both doing? Do you enjoy that one?
Very much so, yeah, very good.
How about you, Iain?
Absolutely. Yeah, thoroughly. Really good to see. Excellent performance.
Yeah, if we start at the start, the first half wasn't the most engaging or eventful, but it seemed like a more fast-paced Town than what played against Stoke. Is that something that you two picked up on as well?
100%. I to be honest, I mean, I didn't see the Stoke game, but having watched a couple of bits of Town, particularly in the last season, tonight was really refreshing because it was the one thing I noticed in some of the games, prior to the start of this season, that they played at a bit of a slow pace. The possession was okay, but they weren't really getting anywhere. But tonight, the pace it just seemed quicker all over the pitch, and the passing was crisp.
What about you, Dave? You obviously watch the games as regularly as possible. Was that something you noticed as well? Just the pace and the intensity was a bit higher tonight.
Yeah, I think so. They fell into a couple of traps first half. They got 70% possession, but managed to have less shots than Blackpool, create less chances, and have 3 less corners, which is very Huddersfield Town over the last couple of seasons. Because, I mean, I don't know how many times we've seen the way to beat Town has been to let them have the ball, and it was starting to feel a bit familiar because they were looking to that, like the heat map is just, they were going left every single time, and Blackpool were doing really well shutting that down. And they were also getting dragged a bit deep. They were almost in a 5-4-1. Danny Ward at times had sort of no one within 20 feet of him, but they had far more energy. There's been games where they've done those exact things and they've been 2-0 down by half-time because they just haven't had the quality to sort of compensate. And then they changed things at half-time and got the reaction.
Yeah, if we skip past the first half then, because the second half's the exciting thing for us. When we came out second half, we just seemed to have turned it up even higher, maybe 5-10% more, a bit more sharper into tackles, a bit more clever with the passing and wanting to go forward. Do you think that was the difference between Town and Blackpool tonight, Iain? Just that little bit of extra intensity and quality on the ball?
Yeah, I think Dave's right, and you're right with the first half. It wasn't the best, but Town had a lot of ball, like you're saying. It was very, very samey as last season. But no, I'd agree. The second half, they've come out. They've laid the foundations. Maybe looking through rose-tinted spectacles, they maybe laid the foundations in the first half. Out past Blackpool, and the passing was good. It was crisp, but again, not really creating a massive lot. But maybe that's part of the building blocks. In the second half, they came out like a house on fire, and they got a great start. That always helps. And but really, the whole of the second half, I mean, they pretty much dominated the game. The passing was, like I say, the passing was crisp. It was precise. You had Jonathan Hogg basically bossing the midfield, and a lot of willing runners. And that's what if you're a Town fan, any football fan, you want to see your players working the socks off. And and tonight, I think Town fans weren't shortchanged in any department. I think every player played the socks off and did as what they could and left everything on the field for the manager tonight and the fans, of course. It was really good performance.
Yeah, if we go on to the first goal, it happened shortly after half-time. Josh Kuroma cutting in on his right foot and a curler past the keeper. Dave, it's been a slower start to this season than many might have thought for Josh, but he seems to be hitting the ground a bit, running a bit more now. He had that first goal against Sheffield United away, and that one might just get him going now.
Yeah, I think what was interesting, I'm going to do the 5 conclusions for the Examiner tomorrow. The first thing I'm going to do is you've got to give Carlos Corberán a lot of credit, really, because the issues they had in the first half, he spotted them, and Town immediately changed the shape for the second half, and they were looking out to the right. And the very first time they managed to sort of win the ball and spread it right into where there was all that space, Sinani goes, jogs up with it. The midfielder has to come across, and it creates that pocket of space that Koroma absolutely loves. That's where he wants to play. I mean, we saw it against Sheffield United when Fraser Campbell came on and he kept dragging that defender across. Koroma wants to go into that sort of 15-yard square just outside the box, because he's absolutely lethal there. He's almost more clinical from that sort of range than he is from closer in, weirdly. And it's just a great strike, isn't it? But again, credit to the head coach there for it. It's one of those goals that when you make a change like that and it comes off straight away, you have to give yourself a little pat on the back. I'm sure he'll be delighted with that, to be fair.
I don't know the angle that you had on the television coverage from where we're sat in the press box. The keeper seemed to react very late. So I imagine Josh has put a certain amount of bend on that for it to look like it's going wide for a great deal of time. Because, like I say, the keeper stood still for a little while and then very last minute tries to make a move for it. But by the time he's done it, it's gone past him.
It's just a great goal. I think, I mean, I'll defer to Iain on this. He'll know far better than me, but I think it's just a great finish.
Yeah, he's caught it. As soon as it's left his foot, it's one of them, isn't it? For every footballer will tell you when they hit a ball like that, they almost know instantaneously this is hitting the back of the net. There's no explaining it. There's no, people think you're mental when you try and explain it. So there's no point trying. Dave, bang, nail on the head. It's just a brilliant strike, and it was destined for the back of the net as soon as he left his foot.
Yeah. And it's funny, if we move from Josh Koroma to our top scorer this season, Matty Pearson, I'm not sure that's what many people were expecting when he joined the club this summer, but that's his third now of this campaign. Again, great ball in from Danel Sinani on the corner, taking Sorba off corner duties for the odd one. Great in-swinger, created all sorts of problems, and then Matty Pearson, right place, right time, and tumbles it in. Iain, what do you think he's just got a goal scorer's instinct then in the box?
Well, he might tell you that, but he knows his job. But he's just having a bit of a purple patch at the moment. But got to say, the corner in. I mean, it was so inviting, and it was whipped in. But the header was, I think, it was about 3 or 4 yards out. I might be being generous there. It was inside the 6-yard box. The keeper's been cut out, but from all the angles that I saw on the TV, Matty Pearson's determination basically got the goal. He was always going to win that header, and all he needed to do was make connection, and it was in the back of the net. The ball was whipped in, really good pace, and like I say, get your head on the end of it, and that's what Matty Pearson did. He got his head on the end of it, back of the net, boom.
Yeah, he had the game off on the bench rather than starting Sinani against Stoke, having logged so many minutes in the international break. But I've been really impressed with him since he's come to town on loan from Norwich, Dave. Is that the opinion you've got of him as well? Sorry.
Yeah, I did the Everton game, and I did the Town podcast, and I did a piece on him after, because he is going to be a conclusion on his own tomorrow as well, because he offers something that nobody else in that squad does. Because I think Sorba Thomas has been absolutely brilliant, but he's quite orthodox in a lot of what he does, with just a little bit of stardust now and then. Sinani is going to drive some fans mad, because there are going to be games where it doesn't come off. But what he offers is the unknown. It's just energy, and he must be an absolute nightmare to train against. He must be a nightmare to play against. And I think that I think balancing football often comes from contrast. So when you've got these different options who are really wildly different, because Sinani's not like anybody else in that squad, I think it's a massive, massive help for Carlos Corberán, because he can change things in games, and he can basically, one of the things we've been talking about for 2 years is Town just asking the same questions week in, week out, and it makes them very easy to defend against. So now you've got Sorba Thomas and Danel Sinani, who are asking completely different ones. Yeah. And Town are profiting from it. So yeah, long may it continue, really.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that's come into the team this year. There seems to be a fluidity in attack that maybe was lacking before, and and like you say, a degree of unpredictability that perhaps we just didn't have last season. Especially with the way the centre forward is perhaps a little bit more interchangeable. Jordan Rhodes when he's back fit, Fraser and Danny Ward. But the two either side, Koroma and Sinani, Koroma seems to almost push up alongside, and then Sinani tucks it into a pocket. Is that a trick that Iain Town can really play on and use as they go forward this season?
Undoubtedly, yeah. I mean, the element of surprise is brilliant, and you're right. The last couple of seasons, it's been a bit, like I say, a bit samey, a bit predictable. You kind of teams sort of were sussing Town out early doors, probably tactically prior to the matches, and it always felt as if they had a bit of a blunt edge. Whereas with that element of surprise and players that can just do something that's different, it makes such an impact in games. And Town are seeing that right now. They're seeing that the players that can do things differently win games or change the course of games, and that is going to be so vital if Town are going to get promotion. If you don't have them players, you end up a middle of the road team, or relegation. You need them sorts of players that are going to just change games, because that Championship's a tough league. Every team's got good, solid players. Not all of them have got the element of surprise, and the teams that go up will have the players that can shock you and just really hard to predict. So yeah, agree with Dave totally. The team at the moment looks like, to me, it's got that little bit of something different, whatever that is, and it might just be those two players being a little bit random within a team frame. Yeah, but they can just pull something out of the bag that just makes the difference.
We're talking about surprises and shocks. We'll come on to Captain Jonathan Hogg's half volley from the edge of the box in a moment. But before that, I just want to have a quick word for Lewis O'Brien, whose energy and determinism in the build-up to that goal was outstanding. He charged down a ball down the line, chased it down himself, won it, gave it to Koroma in the box, who had a shot that came out to Hoggy. And then, Dave, do you want to talk us through what happened? Because I'm not sure I believe what my eyes saw.
Well, I was watching it with I had the pleasure of Oggy and Glennon's commentary, and Matt Glennon was, I think, probably the most surprised man in the stadium. Yeah, was one of the most surprised men in the stadium. And the thing was, all credit to him, because that ball didn't come down at all. He had to.
It was really well controlled.
Yeah, to get over it. I mean, I thought there was a slight deflection off the defender, but I'm not taking anything away from
we'll not mention
that. No, not taking anything from the finish. But I thought he deserved it as well. I mean, we've talked a lot about sort of the energy and having a bit of the unknown, but tonight it felt like Hoggy was back to doing what he's really, really good at, which is just being that first man, that first point of receiving the ball, turning around and looking forward, trying to get Town on the front foot, which they didn't do enough of in the first half. But the second half, he just seemed to go up a gear, and then everybody went up with him. He's just such a sort of key man for this team, really. When Hoggy's good, Town are good.
Yeah,
I think there's a bit of extra freedom for him and Lewis in midfield, because they've got that solid base of Lee Nichols, who's settled in brilliantly, been excellent since he came to the club, and then that three that sit in front. Tom Lee's excellent tonight, and as he has been, really reliable. Matty Pearson, that we've talked about already, but Levi Colwell, who looked like Paolo Maldini tonight, the way he carries the ball forward, and I don't think anybody beat him. That unit, that back four between the three defenders and the goalkeeper, that gives the rest of the team so much more confidence. Just go forward and play, doesn't it, Iain?
Definitely, yeah. And just to go back there, O'Brien and Hogg, we know they're really good players, but having the element of surprise ahead of them, having the solid back line behind them, you're going to see them be able to express themselves. I always class them two players as the kind of players that every team wants in. You need them in your team, don't you? The grafters, the ones that sort of orchestrate the tempo of the game. And I think with better players and more random players ahead of them, they've got more chance to express themselves as well, because it's not everything's on them. Where I felt Hoggy's he's been a lot's been dependent on how he plays to how Town plays. And I just think he's maybe benefiting from the way the other players have raised their games. You're seeing his game go again. And Lewis O'Brien, I thought he was outstanding tonight. And
he was.
they're the kind of players that every team needs, but they're getting better. They can do better. They can do more than just be, diggers and grafters and keeping possession in the middle of the park. And tonight you saw that they did more than just, what you expect of them. They raised their games. I thought overall it was just a really solid, good team performance.
Yeah, I mean, it was indicative of a side that has a really good squad harmony at the moment, a lot of momentum within the camp, a lot of good feeling. And I think a lot of credit should go to the recruitment department, Lee Bromby, the chairman as well, and all the analysts and scouts, because the group we've got together seems to be very strong and working well as a collective. Do you think those people behind the scenes, Dave, ought to have a pat on the back at this point in the season as well? Because they need to be given a solid base for the manager who will come on to actually go out and have a squad and another team to pick from and have this sort of performance from.
Yeah, I think I've talked quite a lot about Town's recruitment this summer, and nobody ever has a perfect transfer window. But I think if they'd have got a passer in midfield, I think you would have had to have said they had a perfect transfer window. I think even without, you have to class it as a really, really good transfer window, which is it's real progress. And I think that when I'm judging a squad, I always look at what's the difference between the weakest member of the squad and the strongest. What's your talent gap, basically? And to be honest with you, with Town over the last, I'd argue, 3 seasons, really, it's just been far, far too big, far too big. This season, they've really gone to town on that defensive recruitment. Corberán said he wanted experience. That's exactly what he's got. And you can just see the options it's given him, the foundations. They've come through sort of a COVID incident at the start of the season that forced them to play with a 3, but they had the options to do it. And now they look really settled and really good in a 3. And that's the difference, that having a sort of squad that are all of a similar level, that all want to play in the first team as well, without pointing any fingers. We know there are a couple who were perhaps the attitude wasn't quite where Town players should be, really. And yeah, I just think there's work to be done, and there's still quite a bit of progress that needs to be made, but it's just streets ahead of where we were this time last year, even.
Yeah, Iain, he's only come on for a couple of substitute appearances so far, but there's been a lot to like about Mipo Debeko in those 2 sort of cameos. A lot of energy. There was one particular moment where Sorba got free on the right and he made a great angled run into the box, and Sorba just couldn't find him. Do you think he's knocking on the door of a start at some point because there is an energy and a speed to his game that might suit the likes of Koroma and Sinani around him?
Yeah, I mean, the way Town are playing is particularly tonight, like I say, the tempo was good. The tempo was really good right throughout the team. So he'll have a chance at some stage, and it's a cliche, but the manager would love that. He's got a player knocking on his door, wanting to start, but at the moment, the first 11 is doing its job, and he's a more than capable player that can come on and add to whatever the team are doing at that point, any moment in time. So he's there. He's part of what Dave's saying is a much better squad this season.
Yeah,
and the manager needs. It's a long way. This is early doors. It's a long old season. So you'll need everyone knocking on the door and everyone's sharp. But yeah, he looks, from what I saw, he looks a very competent, agile, fast, sharp sort of player, and the kind of player that Carlos Corberán, I think, wants at the club, and I think that's how he wants his team to play. So yeah, keep knocking on the door, and hopefully, in the best will of the world, he's going to have to work really hard to get into the team.
Yeah, Dave, do you think those experiences last season and perhaps the learning that Carlos will have done as a young coach last season has put him in a better position to manage and coach a team this season and make the most of this momentum and sort of the players he has around him this year?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm giving away the 5 conclusions here, really, before
I've ruined your article tonight.
But I think that having the Championship is one of the steepest learning curves in football for a player or for a manager. I think throwing the weird circumstances last season. The squad that it wasn't. The first team, I think, was okay last season, but the squad wasn't where it needed to be. I think there were a lot of challenges last season, and I think coming out of last season, there are a lot of questions around Carlos Corberán. And I think, if nothing else, what you have to say this season is you can see there's clear evidence of learning. He's far more proactive in his subs. He's far more proactive with his in-game changes. He's dare I say it, he's just a bit braver about everything. And, you know, you're talking about Mipo as potentially getting a start. I think he will, whereas last season in that same circumstance, I don't think he would have done. I think he would have stuck with Ward or Campbell continually, whereas I think there's a good chance. I think he had another quite tough night at times tonight, Danny Ward, but I don't think that was his fault. He was very, very isolated for a lot of that first half. But the thing I like is Carlos Corberán now has a lot more options at his disposal, but he hasn't just reverted to type with everything. He's trying things, and he's trying to play in different ways, and he's trying to get players to do different jobs. And that's why it was really encouraging to see when Town did revert a little bit to type first half, that immediately at halftime bought them off, changed it, and got them playing properly again, and gets his reward from it. So yeah, I think there's some fairly clear evidence of progress. And again, it's not perfect. Nothing ever is in football, but for the minute, let's just enjoy it, and let's just hope it continues.
Yeah, we'll definitely hope it continues. Saturday, 3 p.m, John Smith Stadium, Nottingham Forest are coming to visit. They've obviously not had the greatest start this season. They're playing tomorrow night as well, so that's Wednesday night they're playing. So they've got an extra night of rest in Town's legs, which will be handy as well. Iain, as an ex-player, what's the mood in camp going to be like for Town ahead of that Saturday game? Are they just going to be bouncing ahead of that Saturday game and can't wait for it to come across?
Yeah, I mean, they after a performance like that, particularly, you know, an away performance like that, Forest coming to Town, what Forest down that, you know, what, 1 point, I think it's at 1 point, yeah. You can't take any team lightly. You know, the Championship's like, it's an unforgiving place to play football. But
Blackpool have beat Fulham this weekend.
Yeah. So, you know, it's you've got to go into it full of confidence. But the thing is, don't change anything. Go out with the same attitude, the same work rate, the same tempo. Go at them, because they're the bottom of the table for a reason, and Town are where they are for a reason. So a little bit of momentum. If they could beat Forest Saturday as well, it just builds them up. It just, you know, it shows that they're solid. They're a solid team with hopefully potential to do well this season.
Iain, I think that's a great note to end on. Town fans that are listening, there are tickets still available for Forest at home on Saturday. So make sure you get on the ticket office on the phone or online and get down to John Smith's for that one, because we're playing really well at the moment and you want to be seeing that in person. Thank you, Dave, and thanks, Iain, for your time this evening. And thanks to Sportsbroker for sponsoring the show. And we'll speak to you all ahead of that Forest game on Saturday.
Pleasure.